Good evening, Britannia, and hello to the rest of the world. Welcome back to 2CTV and the latest update from the general election in the UK. The Conservative Party is completely falling apart. They are running out of money. They have officially run out of the main election money because they've only managed to raise about £250,000 over the last week or so in the second part of the campaign. And Reform UK are coming up in the opinion polls. The Labour Party is also coming down a little bit, but they're still going to be winning anyway. I'm going to explain exactly what's going on with these Tory parliamentary candidates across the country and how even people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Liz Truss and many others who were in safe seats, they're all going to be losing their constituencies in this election. The whole game is changing for the Tory party because it's just going to be a bunch of liberal Tories who are going to be staying, and out of those liberal Tories they're going to have to find a leader. Even Penny Mordaunt is going to be losing her seat potentially, so it's probably going to be people like Tom Tugendhat who are going to be becoming the next Tory leader, which means the Tory party is finished, at least for the next 10-20 years. But we're going to give you guys all the updates. And of course, if you're watching this live, we're going to get your reaction in this live stream. Tory candidates in seats with majorities from 4,000 to 6,000 have reportedly been ordered to shut down their election campaign to help cabinet ministers with the majorities of over 20,000. So these are the government ministers who are in proper safe seats, or what they used to be called safe seats. If you have a majority of 20,000 plus, usually in the past, you don't even campaign there because that's just a waste of money. People are going to vote for you anyway. But they know that the candidates in the seats with 4,000 to 6,000 majority, they're all going to lose, which means the vulnerable seats are now the ones that are 20,000 plus, which is kind of funny, but this is what they've done to their own party. So the Tories are falling apart, and we're going to come back to Tories in terms of how they're doing in the opinion polls and what's going to happen after the election. Based on what we know now, I'm going to explain the predictions of speculations about post-election, post the 4th of July. Now, at the same time, Reform UK are coming up, they're doing really well in the opinion polls, but a number of our institutions and establishments are not doing too well. The mainstream media continue their negative campaigning against Reform UK and Nigel Farage. Ofcom, the media regulator, being unfair. And the latest update that we had yesterday was Google made a move against Nigel Farage. Nigel posted this: election interference alert. Big tech giant Google has blocked Reform UK's ad account, the advertising account. They are trying to stop the reform message. I hope that Matt Britton, who was in charge of Google in this part of Google in this country, can look into this issue as a matter of urgency. We want action. Then this was posted at 6:23 p.m. yesterday. Then shortly after, a few minutes after, Nigel said, breaking. Google have just reinstated our ad account. Big thanks to Matt. A big victory. This is the influence and power of Nigel Farage, by the way. When something happens, and if he makes a big deal out of it, he usually tends to win. You remember a few months ago with the big banks and the debanking scandal that was happening, and before it happened to Nigel Farage, it was happening to many others that didn't have the same platform as Nigel, and their voices were not heard. But when Nigel obviously started speaking out against it, then things started to change a little bit. So that's happening to Reform. Nigel Farage is also now attacking Ofcom because of election interference and how unfair the Ofcom have been in terms of the TV debate, in terms of the attention, the airtime and platforming, and any airtime that Reform UK tend to get is simply negative. They don't really objectively report things that the Reform UK are saying or doing. That's why 2CTV is here to do what they are not doing. And I know it's been annoying because a lot of you guys say, well, why is it every election update on 2CTV about Reform UK? Because they're not getting the fair and balanced coverage on other channels, so we're going to have to do it anyway. Same thing that I did back in the day, of course, with the others, including SDP and all the other left-wing and right-wing parties as well. Now, big update from the opinion polls, the latest ones. In the red wall, it's all over for the Tories. Labour are coming down. Labour have come down 7 points. They are now at 35%. Reform UK on 26 points. They've come up 4 points. And the Tories have gone down 3. 18. They're now at 18%. Lib Dems are 11. Green Party 9. Now, this is very important because across the country, overall, the issue with this is that the Lib Dems are still polling less than Reform UK, but they are potentially going to be winning more seats, and Lib Dems could potentially form their next opposition. So we're going to have a Labour government, a Lib Dem opposition, and I'm going to explain what's going to happen if that is the result. Before we do that, massive update on the youth vote between 18 and 24. Now, of course, Labour is high. That's normal. But they have come down 8 points. They're now at 47. Reform UK have come up 9 points. Reform is now 21% amongst young people. Lib Dems, of course, they should actually be much higher than 15, but they're at 15. Actually, Lib Dems should be much higher. Greens, 7%, and the Tories, 6%. 6. So young people are coming towards Nigel Farage and Reform, which is absolutely fascinating. Of course, we've seen the rise of the TikTok game and social media game from Nigel and Reform UK in general, and the messaging as well. People are starting to read the manifestos and they're like, actually, Reform UK talks a lot of sense. We don't agree with everything, but most of it is actually pretty good. Young people are saying that. So, but when you look at the consistency of the last few polls, Reform are around 21% now. And it's funny because the first poll that came out a few days ago said 20%. That was Matt Goodwin. And everybody said, it's Matt Goodwin. He's, of course, right-wing. This is bias. But every single other opinion poll since then shows that Reform is now 20%, 21%. Labour are starting to come down. They're now 39%. But the interesting thing about, of course, the red wall area is that Reform is only 9 points behind Labour. Now, that's very important. But the Tories are 19%, and they're going to come down slightly, a little bit more as well. Lib Dems, 12%, Greens, 6%. Now, let's go and talk about what's going on with the election and the new parliament. Lib Dems, let's just say, based on the current numbers, this is the result. Labour will get a lot of seats, a government. Reform, based on 20%, they could get about 5 seats, maybe 6 or 7 seats. Lib Dems, 12%, they could get about 70 seats, maybe 90 seats. And they will form the opposition, right? Nigel Farage will be winning in Clacton. Nigel Farage will stand up in the House of Commons and address the country and would say, we have a problem. One, we got more votes, popular votes, than Lib Dems, but Lib Dems got more seats. That's not fair. Let's talk about reforming the electoral system. 2, he will tell the country, having Labour, a left-wing party, Labour, as government, and a left-wing party, Lib Dems, as opposition, is not healthy for democracy because the Lib Dems will not be in opposition to the Labour Party, and the whole country will keep an eye on what's going to happen with this parliament. So, from July the 5th till Christmas, we could easily have a situation, unless there could be miracles, that Keir Starmer could somehow become the best Prime Minister we've ever had, right? Potentially. But if it goes the way it is, the way the Labour Party operates, the way the Lib Dems operate, from July till Christmas, there's going to be chaos because the Lib Dems can't show opposition. The real opposition to the Labour Party will be coming from who? No, not the Tories. No, not Reform either. From the left-wing members of the Labour Party. The left-wing, proper left-wing MPs in Labour will start fighting back against Keir Starmer's cabinet, because Keir Starmer's cabinet are going to have to implement some policies that will be seen as more centrist. And also, there will be government. They're no longer anti-establishment. Oh, we are just the Labour Party. We're going to fight with the workers. So the left-wing MPs will hate Starmer by Christmas. Lib Dems can't show opposition. People will be outraged on the streets. And then we could have a situation where Keir Starmer's approval rating would completely tank by Christmas or maybe afterwards. And you can potentially, this is not a guarantee, I'm just speculating, which I usually don't do, but based on the current numbers, I'm saying, we could have a situation where early next year or within 2 years, Parliament will collapse. Sort of like what happened with Theresa May in 2019. After 2017, which was absolutely chaotic. Parliament will not be able to function properly. And the only people who will be speaking out are a few Reform UK MPs. And the Tories will be forced to pick a liberal Tory again as a leader because they don't have any other Conservatives left. They're all going to lose their seats. And the rest of the Conservative-leaning Tories are going to have to join Reform. Members, not MPs. I'm talking about actual grassroots activists. And they could have a snap election within a year or 2 years. And potentially Reform UK could win. By that point, they will have the infrastructure, they'll have the funding, and the funding is going up every day anyway. They're stealing all the Tory donors, and they're taking the Labour Party votes. So, I know it's wishful thinking, but based on the current numbers, and it could easily change anyway, this Parliament will not be sustainable. The Red Knight says there should be a recall mechanism like in the States. But that's the thing. I mean, the good thing about the system is when there is enough outrage, it would reflect in the media, even the media, and Parliament, just like what happened in 2019. If there is enough outrage on a daily basis, for example, by Christmas or afterwards, parliamentarians will have a meltdown and they're going to have to do something, especially if Keir Starmer is brought down. Again, as I said, maybe he's going to be the best Prime Minister. Not going to happen, obviously. But if he is replaced, and if they, for example, bring in Angela Rayner to keep the left-wing MPs happy in the Labour Party, then they're going to be obviously having a snap election. They're going to have to. Dr. Chan says, you are missing the most important point. It isn't a reform. It's 459 independents. I'm not really sure what this is, but okay. I might have missed the context. Sorry about that. Poppy says, gosh, if we get Labour and America cheat again, it is game over. Well, no, it will show the outrage. But we'll see. Facehugger says, I don't trust postal voting. Lefties use it for fraud. Absolutely. But right now, it's all backfiring because even the young people are coming to vote for reform. These are the same young people that Keir Starmer is hoping to get, because the reason they're bringing down the voting age to 16 so that children could vote, because they assume that young people vote left-wing, and they usually tend to. But when you have a left-wing establishment, basically the Labour government, you're not going to have that anymore, because young people are going to realize, well, we're going to go to uni, we're going to basically finish uni, we're going to be graduates, and the country is in chaos. So by default, they will look for an alternative. They can't really vote Tory because of the Tory branding, but a new party, just like how Le Pen is getting the young vote, just like how Donald Trump is getting all the young vote, it is possible. Anyway. Paul Fisher says, mainstream media only promote Tory or Labour. Exactly. I mean, we've seen in the debates that they've organised there, but they also don't mind. They're no longer attacking the Tory party, apart from the betting scandals that's still ongoing, which is just kind of funny again. It's just like the Partygate all over again. We have multiple people who are now under investigation in the Conservative Party and Conservative government for placing bets on the election date before it was announced. But their media are not really, they've reported on it a few times, but they are focusing on Nigel and bringing down Reform UK. Steve Webb says, Tusi, I've been saying Labour will not last 2 years. You must be reading my tweets. I mean, yeah, I think this is the instinct of a lot of people, just like Steve, across the country. Because it's not just because it's a Labour government. It's Labour government with the Lib Dems as opposition. Parliament will not last 2 years. It's not even that Labour government will not last 2 years. It's Parliament. It's going to be shambles. Dean says that the idea that reform could win power within a couple of years is totally for the birds. But they said the same a month ago about reform even reaching 20%. They were saying if reform even gets 13% of the popular vote, that's a huge, it's not going to happen. It's totally for the birds, they said. But they're not laughing now, are they? And the way we're saying within 2 years, for example, reform winning power potentially, I'm not saying they definitely will. I'm just saying based on the current numbers, what was happening is reform could win power only if the Tory party is completely finished. The Tories are not finished yet. They are finishing. But if the Tories, all the Conservative Tories, a few of them like Jacob Rees-Mogg, if they all lose their seats And you only have a few MPs left in Parliament. And out of those Tory MPs, they're going to have to pick a leader. And if they pick, because they will be forced to pick a Liberal leader, because that's all they have left in those places like Surrey or whatever they are, like Tom Tugendhat. And that leader is not going to be able to bring back the right-wing support. So there'll be more Tories who are still going to be voting for Rishi Sunak because they're not ready for reform. Because Tories are still actual Tories. They're still conservative-minded. They don't like change. They're scared of change. By that point, they're going to feel more confident to go to a potential Reform UK party. If by that point, also, to help Dean with this argument, if Reform UK MPs in Parliament, the 5, 6, 7 of them, have actually performed well, they have to also prove a point that they will be good MPs and they will create teams across the country, local branches with local chairmen and grassroots, and of course the donors will come. If all that happens, then absolutely, there is definitely a possibility for Reform UK to be the centre-right party. Not right now, but if all that happens. Fran Hall says, Nigel has been fighting for the UK and the British for the past 20 years in Europe, probably longer now, 30 years actually. Find his videos on YouTube. He has always had the best interests of the UK at heart, always. Super chat from David the Yorkshireman. Hello, David. Saying, I am disabled and housebound. Get rid of postal voting. I cannot vote. No, the whole... Okay, so when people are saying get rid of the postal voting, there have been proposals to get rid of postal voting, is about everybody else. So in normal countries, you can still have postal voting or mailing ballots. You can have it just for the very elderly and pensioners who basically can't leave their house, and basically the disabled. There will always be exceptions. You can't just completely get rid of the whole thing. And it has to be completely supervised. But you can't really have a situation where everybody just can randomly vote, because the young people, students, for example, can register in 2 places. They can register where they are based at the university, and they can also register at their home, their parents' home, and they could do postal vote for one of them, and they could go to to vote in the local elections, the constituency elections that they have in person as well. You see the problem, right? There are people who vote twice in 2 different areas, and that is not fair. Jay Spice says, considering that Reform are a new, fresh, anti-conscription, peaceful party, they have done well in just a few weeks to get rid of being classed as others in the polls to overtaking the Tories. Exactly. People still don't appreciate how impressive it is. Whether you support Reform or not, it is still impressive. Now, obviously, you can give most of the credit to the Tory party doing it to themselves, the downfall, of course. But Nigel also saw a great opportunity to not just come back, but actually start a relaunch a very, very good and effective campaign compared to what Richard Tice was doing. That is a very, very different campaign. David says, I'm late to the party, and I've just seen the Labour Party on 35%, down 7, Reform 26%, and so Reform will just get 5% from Labour. It will be Labour 30, 31. So you're referring to this poll that we showed, 35, 26. This is the opinion poll in the Red Wall in Yorkshire. Obviously, it's promising, but it's still not going to resonate in terms of reflect in terms of the number of seats. But it will be enough. All Reform UK need is 2 MPs, but they're going to potentially get 5 to 7 MPs. I mean, the whole thing could change, obviously. You never know. But even if they get 2, that's good enough. It's a start. But 5, that's perfect. That's good enough to be the opposition on behalf of the centre-right in Parliament. Alex says, once Labour get into government and become unpopular, they will go into an existential crisis like the Tories. Exactly. Reform will then become more powerful. Labour Party is not based to be a party of government. They're always very good as opposition. And when the only time they were kind of relatively successful short term was under Blair, and Blair had it easy at first because the economy wasn't a good place, the government budget wasn't a good place, and people just wanted a happy warrior, and he did not govern as a left-wing leader at first, so that worked. But a normal Labour Party in government, people would not like it. They think they want it, but they're going to regret it immediately. Look what happened in Spain. After years of socialism, it's the young people who are coming out in Spain to protest in defense of free market capitalism and conservative values. Now, Super Chat saying, love what you do. Thank you very much, ISIS71, for the support. Quickly going back to you guys as well. Greg Smith says, reform, play the long game. Labour will destroy Britain and the public will be ready for reform. Keir Starmer will be hated more than Justin Trudeau here in Canada. Love from Alberta. But yeah, I could see that only because, again, to clarify, the Tories will not be able to get their act together. Now, a lot of you are angry at the Tories saying, well, even if they do, we're not going to support them. Because right now you're seeing the current Tories. Hypothetically, there is always an opportunity after the election for the next 5 years, also 10 years, Tories to completely pretend to change at least, or try to change, have a very right-wing leaders, blah, blah, blah. But they would not have this opportunity because all the potentially few right-wing people are going to lose their seats in this election. So they're going to be left with a couple of liberal Tories, and I don't think anybody wants those guys. So reform will be having an open goal opportunity. And actually, if reform don't become the main party of the centre-right after a couple of years, actually, it's the fault of reform. Because it's an open goal opportunity. There's no more Tories, basically. It's a bunch of liberal Tories. So we'll come back in a couple of years, and if reform become not doing well, it's their fault. We'll see. Maya, did the rich Muslim donate to reform to help Labour to recognize Palestine? No. Is that what you want? No. Okay. There is a very sound conservative right-leaning cultural Muslim. He's not actually a Muslim, who's now supporting Reform UK, and is irrelevant to the Israel-Palestine debate. This is the big donors that used to donate to the Tory party, to the Labour Party, and all these guys. And of course, Reform UK will never change their stance on Israel-Palestine. Same applies to the Tories. The Tory party have had for years big, rich Muslim donors that have been funding the party, and some of them wanted Palestine to be recognized. Even the Tory party, CCHQ, and the Tory leadership said, no, we're going to take your money, thank you, but we're not going to do the whole Palestine thing. So if the Tories can do it, Reform UK can do it as well. Palestine is not real. Tory says, Brexit moment incoming. Well, on that note, let me just give you guys a bit of a reminder of what the situation is now like in Brexit Britain. Because if you listen to the mainstream media, Brexit was not only the worst things happened, apparently, but it's also very fascist, right? And they said Britain will be doing much worse than the European Union countries. In reality, we've already seen the numbers right now that we are factually, objectively doing better than Germany, France, and the rest of the Eurozone. But the IMF forecast themselves, the IMF is saying the real GDP growth in the UK to be the third fastest in the G7 between 2024 and 2028. Now, of course, Labour government will be changing all that. But the US, of course, is first as usual. Canada second because of the size. UK third. And then you have France, Germany, Italy, and Japan. So this is Brexit Britain. It's working. And this is despite the Tory government completely messing up Brexit Britain. Imagine if you had a good right-wing government working for the interests of the people in Britain. Brexit Britain would have done much better than now. But that was the whole point of Brexit. Brexit wasn't supposed to make things better or worse. Brexit was the process of leaving the EU, and afterwards, it's up to you as the country and your parliament and your government to either go this way or that way or that way. You can have a better country, you can have a worse country, you can have a similar country. It's called independence and self-determination. But the liberal left thought, oh, Brexit, so is it going to be good or bad? So you're saying it's going to be good. So what if it's bad? It's not about being good or bad. It's up to you as a country when you become a sovereign country. And we're still not fully sovereign because we've got thousands of EU laws still inside our statute books. It doesn't really help. It makes things complicated. Anyway, we'll keep you guys posted tomorrow. I'm going to take a break now. We've had 3 live streams already tonight. If you missed the last 2, how dare you? Go and watch those two as well. If you have not subscribed to the channel, also how dare you subscribe to the channel. I'm Maya TC, and we are the media.